variables. In this lesson, we'll be given problem situation where we have to identify independent and dependent variables, just like cause and effect. Objective: students will be able to identify independent dependent variables and label them on x and y. Independent variable is x, the input, does not depend on anything, stands alone, is not changed by other variables, affects value of other variable that is dependent, the y value, the output, located or labeled on x-axis of the graph, is input or the domain or the x value, is the x value in the table or the equation, is the cause in a problem situation. It's a cause. Dependent variable y, or also known as output or range, is labeled on y-axis. Depends on independent variable, which is x. Independent variable causes a change in dependent variable. So independent variable changes dependent variable. Located or labeled on y-axis of the graph, is output or range of y value, is y value on a table or equation, is the effect. X is the cause, y is the effect. Example: identify cause and effect. I stepped in puddle, my sneakers got wet. Which one is the cause? Which one is the effect? Cause is I stepped in the puddle. Effect: my sneakers got wet. Stepping in puddle caused my sneakers to become wet. Stepping in puddle is independent of sneakers getting wet. Sneakers getting wet is dependent on stepping on puddle. Practice 1. Identify independent dependent variables. Later in lesson, in future, we'll do quantity and the units. The more time you spend studying, the better grade you have. The time you spend studying, the better grade you have. Independent variable is time spent studying. Dependent variable, grades you have or grades you earned. Label x and y axis with independent dependent variables. So in this lesson we are only going to label. We are not graphing. We'll graph in next lesson. Independent variable, time spent studying, so that will go on x-axis. Dependent variable, grades you have earned, so goes on the y-axis. This is your x, this is your y. So we'll say grade you have, and for x-axis we'll say time spent studying. Time spent studying. Practice 2. Identify independent dependent variables. The hours you worked and money you earned. Hours worked, money earned. Independent variable is hours worked. Dependent variable is money earned. So if you worked 1 hour, you earn $13. Suppose your hourly rate is $13. So if you work 2 hours, you earn $26. The more hours you work, the more money you make. So hours work is independent. Money earned is dependent on the number of hours worked. Now label x and y axis with independent dependent variables. So independent variable, hours worked. Hours worked is x and money earned is y. So money earned hours on Y. Very important to label your graph. Start to learn to label your graph. Hours worked is X. Practice 3. Identify independent dependent variables. Tina is driving to visit her aunt who lives 345 miles away from Tina's home. She travels an average speed of 55 miles per hour. Miles per hour is underlined. So in coming lessons, you will see per is the word used for rate of change, for the slope, change in y over change in x. So you have miles per hour. Miles is the distance, hour is the time. Which one is independent? Which one is dependent? The distance is dependent. And the time, the hour is independent. So in coming lessons, you'll see where we'll say time is the quantity and hour is the quantity unit. Time is the quantity and the hour is quantity unit. Now, says label x and y axis with independent and dependent variables. Independent variable is hours, dependent is miles. So, with our x is our y. We have miles on y and we have hours on x.